So I'm about to go finish off the weekend in the hot tub and relax for a bit. And one of the things I've been thinking about is how people so often assume things generalize to everybody else. Whether you're talking about, lifting weights or other exercise, and certainly martial arts, one of the things that we see over and over and over again is it worked for me, so it's going to work for you kind of mentality. People aren't necessarily saying that explicitly, but there's this mentality of, well, I've had success doing it, so it must work. As if it must work is some blanket universal kind of thing. And it's not. I mean, just like everything in reality is context dependent. Everything is absolutely context dependent. Things only work and don't work based on, the conditions that are there, the consequences that happen because of those conditions, what is actually trying to be achieved, in all of that. And so, a great way to frame this, right? Because I bring up, scientific studies all the time. When you're talking about science, one of the things that studies tell us, for the most part, is a general trend line that is kind of an average, a statistical average that is really an artificial point on a graph that may be quite chaotic. And it can give us the spread, right? And this is what kind of standard deviation is. This is looking at distribution, whether it's normal distribution or not. And a lot of stuff ends up being normal distribution when you're talking about human development, but not everything. But the point is that, the science can tell us averages and spreads, but it doesn't tell us anything about the individual. So there's a lot of people who are trying to be science-based, or will claim to be science-based, and then act like a scientific study is the be-all and end-all for every individual. And it's like, well, it's not. It's a starting point based on our best estimates on the data at hand of, where most people fall on a trend line. And so, hey, let's start here. And then if you know kind of where the mins and the maxes are, if you know what the spread is, then you can make adjustments as people respond to training differently, right? Now, the truth is that we don't have studies for everything, and not all studies are of the same quality, and so on and so on, right? So the studies don't necessarily generalize. The studies give us a starting point. Likewise, though, studies not generalizing does not mean that your N of one, that your individual experience generalizes any better to anybody else. If you find success doing a certain technique, if you find success doing a certain routine, if you find success periodizing your training in a certain way, or organizing your workload in a certain way, how you schedule your rest and recovery, your nutrition, all of that. There may be things that overlap, right? But one of the ways that I put it recently, and I think this is a fairly decent illustration of it, is if people are points on a scatter plot, right? No two points ever occupy the exact same space, right? Some points are closer and some points are further away from each other, but none of them, and the further you zoom in, the more you realize nothing occupies the same space. It's essentially the same principle as particle physics, in the idea that two objects, no matter how infinitesimally small, cannot occupy the same space at the same time. And obviously we're not talking about quantum superposition stuff, and that's a different thing anyway. Quantum superposition is more like something could be in multiple places at once, and that's a whole different thing. But it's like the opposite, the inverted end of the spectrum. But the point is that two things cannot occupy the same space at the same time. No two individuals are going to behave, respond, do things exactly the same way as anybody else. And you have to make room for people to individualize their training, right? And if that means doing a technique a slightly different way, if that means organizing their training a slightly different way, if that means that some people have to work harder than others, or some people have to work less hard than others, then so be it. I mean, that is just how it falls, right? Is if everything in reality, at least every physical thing in reality, matter and energy, was equally distributed, that's essentially the end point of entropy. That would be heat death. There would be nothing, no friction, no organization, just everything evenly spread out. But anyway, without getting bogged down into a scientific tangent and whatever, equality does not exist, and it basically can't exist, because no matter where you are, no matter how close you are to somebody else, you are not occupying the same space. You are not made of the same things. You are not bumping into the same molecules as them. You are not experiencing the same energetic gains and losses as them. And all of those things stack up in the human experience into what's going to work and what's going to not work based on that context. And obviously we're zooming in at a level that is incomprehensibly just impossible to measure. It's to illustrate the point, though, that people aren't the same, and people will never be the same, and people physically cannot be the same. And so be careful about your confidence in recommending things. Always frame things in, I've found success with this, I know others who have found success with this, maybe it's something you can give a try. Don't be afraid to modify it as you go to see how things work, right? Always frame it with the condition of modifying for the individual, because you have to make room for individuality. It's just the way that reality is, right? So be careful about generalizing, because things don't really generalize. Yes, the further you zoom out, the lower resolution the picture is, the more things are going to generalize into the rough categories of things of humans are humans, and thus human things will generalize to humans, right? But what does that mean? What are the margins on that? What is the spread on that? Like, it's almost useless, right? And then you go down to population level, and then you go down to phenotype level or whatever, right? And you can get bogged down in that stuff, and really all we have to do is just make room for individuals to be individuals and do things the way that they need to do them. And yes, if somebody is struggling, you try to help them, but you don't help them by being overconfident in a prescription. You help them by giving them suggestions and ideas and pointing a direction that at least has some percentage of known quantity of success. And maybe that'll work and maybe it won't, but at least you tried to help, but you didn't give them false confidence. And that's kind of the long and short of it. So I'm going to get done rambling. I'm going to go sit in the hot tub for a while, and I will talk to you guys later. Good journey. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share. Check us out on our other socials, and please head over to blacksunboxing.com to get a little more info, including how to contact us. Furthermore, if you are in the Phoenix area, please feel free to stop in, say hi, join in for a class, whatever. Also, if you ever see us cite sources or just for additional content, please check out our Substack. That is where we put all of the sources we use in our videos and is a major part of this. Plus, it serves as a membership platform for long distance learning and for people who would like to support us but aren't local. We would greatly appreciate it if you signed up. Even just the free membership helps us out a lot. All right, I will see you guys in the next video. Good journey.